You guys, this is a great turnout, first of all. I think this is one of the best turnouts we've had in a while, and that says something because we've had some really amazing speakers here.
We're not going to talk about mortgage rates.
We're not going to talk about mortgage rates. We're not talking about politics today. We are talking about food and entrepreneurialism and business, and everyone give a welcome to Tom Douglas. Tom's bio is so deep that I have to read it because there's so many things I don't want to miss here. So let me just send it out. And I'm sure I'll miss some things too. Tom Douglas moved to Seattle from Delaware in 1977, and in 1989 he opened his first Seattle restaurant, Dalia Lounge, which very soon became one of the most acclaimed restaurants in the region. In the 1990s, Tom began opening a few other restaurants. Edda's near Pike Place, Palace Kitchen, and in the process, he won the prestigious James Beard Award for Best Northwest Chef in 1994.
Yay!
That's just the start. This keeps going. Since then, he's opened numerous other Seattle restaurants, including Lola and Serious Pie Downtown, Seatown, Cuoco, did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Brave Horse Tavern in South Lake Union, and others for a total of 13 restaurants today. He has published 3 cookbooks with a 4th on the way next month. And if that's not enough, he's been on Iron Chef America, which we'll talk about, and this year won the James Beard Award for Restaurateur of the Year in the nation. So big. Wow. And the funny thing about this, to actually put this bio together, Tom, I had to search site after site after site on the internet because in kind of true Seattle style, you're so low-key about the bio on your site, it doesn't list half the amazing things you've done. So I really had to do some digging, and I think that says something about your personality and your enterprise, too, that you're doing all these things, but it's kind of...
Well, I kind of hate when that happens because I never let the truth get in the way of a good story, so each site has a different story, and so...
Well, it's good stuff. And so let's just start. I mean, I got so many good questions from people today and so many places we can go, but let's just start with where you started. 1977, you decided to move to the Pacific Northwest. Tell us why and tell us how this all started for you.
Well, if you were from Newark, Delaware, you'd decide to move out also. All of my family, I have 6 sisters and a brother, and they've all went to the University of Delaware. And I came out of a Catholic school, but I had worked my way through, and so I knew that I didn't need college, that I didn't want college, and that I didn't even like high school. So that I had a car, I bought a car with my job earnings, and had put $300 aside, and on my way out the door, after I loaded my station wagon, I had a 67 Chevy Bel Air station wagon, and I loaded everything I owned into the back, and on my way out the door, my dad handed me the $300 that he gave to each of his kids as they left home, so I had $600, and so I had enough money to drive around the country, and with my first apartment down payment, which was $80, I had enough money left to get an apartment and a job in Seattle, so I kind of ran out of money here, and here I am, that many years later.
And so when did you first become a chef?
Well, there's some people probably right here in this audience that would argue if I am or not already. I've been cooking for a long time. I cooked back in Delaware at the Hotel DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware, but I was a cook's helper. And then, my first interview out here was a little place called The Butcher in Bellevue. And the guy, big, kind of like a little longer than my hair, but big Italian dude with big hair and big gold chains and big hairy chest. And the rest of him was quite small in stature. After he interviewed me, he told me I would never cook in this town in a great Italian accent. And so that's kind of was my introduction to Seattle. Seattle is funny, food goes through fads, as I'm sure everything does, but Seattle was a saute house when I got here. And there were restaurants up on Broadway called Boondocks, Sundeckers, and Green Thumbs, Lion O'Reilly's and BJ Monkey Shines, the Broadway. There are all sorts of restaurants, 13 Coins, Henry's off Broadway, all sorts of restaurants that were saute houses. And it kind of got it started at Henry Africa's down in San Francisco, that kind of idea. And where you have a little bit of an open kitchen, you have flame, and you have chefs who really don't know what the fuck they're doing, and who are gladly sacrificing food quality for cheap thrills of flame and other things. And it became a phenomenon, and that's where I got my start in Seattle restaurants, at the Benjamin's in Bellevue, up on the Seattle Trust Tower in '77. And there you go. That's how I got here. And that was my food background. Before that was just this 7-month stint as a cook's helper at the Hotel DuPont in Wilmington, Delaware.
So it sounds like a lot of this was
I didn't take home ec. That's my formal training.
So a lot of this was self-taught. I mean, you weren't really
You're
taught
never
by
really
the
self-taught.
saute.
You are working on the line next to really talented people all the time, and you learn stuff every day. And when you do that, that's why people always ask me, should I go to culinary school or not? And you learn so much just being on the line with people that have been cooking for years and years. And the other place that I learned a ton, you know, I once was called 2 Asian dudes in a white dude's body. And it was because I have such a passion for Asian cooking. And some of that came from the whole wave of Vietnamese immigration back in 77, 78, 80. That time, you know, as different waves of immigrants come through our country, they end up in kitchens. It's the best place to kind of get a start if you don't have language skills. You know, that's just where you end up. The Russians ended up there, the Cubans, the Sudanese, the Poles when they brought the wall down. It's just wave after wave, and then the Vietnamese was there for a while. Now it's more Latino in nature, but it is just waves over the years. So I've learned from all of those people.
And how did this then translate into you opening your first restaurant? What drove
Nobody
you to
would
do
give me a
that?
goddamn job. I swear that's what happened. I was the highest paid chef in Seattle at Cafe Sport. I was the general manager of Cafe Sport, which is a pretty unique quality at the time to be a chef and general manager of the highest rated restaurant in town. That just really didn't happen. You were chef owner sometimes, but always front of the house was somewhat different. Matter of fact, even little independent restaurants weren't as well known. But it was big news that I left, and it was big news to me that nobody offered me a job. So I had to, as I told you earlier, when you are unemployed, your wife gets pregnant. And
All that time on your hands.
yeah, I think it was about 6 minutes after I quit my job. So that's how I ended up needing to. My uncle had a long-standing offer. He lived in New York City and was a big restaurant person, and as you are from San Francisco, and he would always said, "You guys, you know, you can do whatever you want. You guys are great." So he put up 50 grand, and we opened the Dalia Lounge, and we were underfinanced, but we made it through that. Yeah, we had many instances. We started in November of '89 with 42 employees at the Dalia, and by April we were down to 20, and we had opened an extra 2 days for business. So we were skin and bones, just trying to get through it. So.
Now, Dalia Lounge and you're credited for creating what's now known as Pacific Northwest cuisine, and what Seattle and Portland too are known for. How did this come about? How do you describe what's Pacific Northwest?
Yeah. Well, originally, and what we have today is a hybrid of where we were. So originally the Pacific Northwest cuisine, when it became an item to talk about, as it was in New England and as it was in San Francisco, California cuisine, and that whole process was happening when I got my start. But that was mainly because I had so much Asian influence in my cooking. I was using local ingredients with global techniques. And that was really the hot thing in my first chef time era. Also, I was changing. I wouldn't wear a chef coat or a chef hat. That was a big deal when I started. I know that's nothing now, but the fact that I wouldn't wear a chef coat was, people just couldn't get over it. I lost endorsements because of it. It was the weirdest thing. I would cook in shorts and a t-shirt, and that's just the way it was. But then now what you're seeing in the world of Seattle cooking and Portland cooking is a hybrid. It is hyper local. It is hyper creative. If you look at what Matt Dillon is doing at Sitka and Spruce in the Corson building, if you're taking the best of global cuisine and intensifying it right on Seattle products. We've bought a farm. We now produce, last year was almost 60,000 pounds of produce, including 12 tons of tomatoes. Things that you just can't do over on this side, but on the hot side. I mean, I was just over there yesterday or the day before, and man, we have 2,000 tomato plants that are right now producing 100 pounds of tomatoes per plant. And we're just inundated. If you go to any of our restaurants, have the tomato salad. But things that you just wouldn't consider. We have rows and rows of gorgeous peppers. Matter of fact, my little Thai chili peppers are just about ripe, and they're going to go into our homemade black bean sauce with chilies. The eggplants, just unbelievable eggplants coming off you'll have them all over at Lola and all over the restaurants right now. So that's where the Seattle scene is now. It has changed, and I think our success has been changing with it rather than this is my style and I'm sticking to it. I think that's a business acumen for anyone to have, is that you have to be aware of what's going on in the world, whether it's the restaurant across the street or if it's the hot spot in Paris. You know, having just spent 5 weeks in Paris, there's very few hot spots in Paris. It was very disappointing.
So when you first opened Dalia Lounge, what was it like as far as getting the local produce? Because as you mentioned today, Seattle is such a vibrant town with all of the local farmers markets and so many restaurants sourcing locally and many having their own farms or their own rooftop gardens and ways to source that. How was that 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago?
It was better 20 years ago, I got to say. I mean, I was the original consultant for the herb farm. I'm the one who helped them get started in their business, and it was better. We had farmers coming to our back door. We had people that would show up, okay, I've got 3 veal livers and I've got a veal loin left, and they just unload off the back of their truck. A guy would drive up with a pickup truck with a saltwater tank with an aeration system, and he would go to the Hood Canal and fill it with spot prawns and bring it to my back deck, and we'd net out the spot prawns, and it was just better then. We had foragers go up to the Pilchuck National Forest and bring back little baggies of wild greens and flowers, and you know, it was just so much easier. Now there's so much pressure on the independent farmer. He can't supply it. There's not enough of them, and everyone wants it. And you know, 2 of our best farmers, PCC just took them off the market. Rents Due Ranch. We brought them up from nothing, and we were buying as much as we possibly could. On Friday, on Monday, she called me and said, you know what? I just had a negotiation with PCC over the weekend, and we're giving everything to PCC. And so much of the organic produce now is sold at market rate, so at retail, which cuts, you know, us out of we can't afford to do that. I went to the Ballard Farmers Market, Seabreeze Farm, beautiful job. They did a beautiful job. 2.5 pound chickens, $63. I can't run a restaurant on that. You're not going to pay me $50 for chicken. I just can't do it. So it's actually was easier when we were the only ones doing it, because there was a lot of people that wanted to sell to us.
Back to the economics of the business side. So you opened Dalia Lounge. It took a little while, but you got it off the ground. And then it seems like in the 90s, things really started steamrolling for you. Cookbooks, restaurants, your first James Beard Award.
But you have to, those cookbooks, that's what helps the steam. You know, you're in marketing, you know. When you want to get on TV in New York on the Today Show, and you just say, I'm a chef from Seattle, they just say, you have a book? Marketing entrance. It's just unbelievable the difference it was to have a book. So the book is what helped that steam.
Yeah, talk us through that. I mean, was there a master plan in this? How did this start to happen for you?
Well, we never made much money at the Dalia, so we thought, well, let's use the Dalia as our flagship and keep it the way it is, and then we would open a couple of restaurants to actually make money. Hence the one in the Pike Place Market, Edda's, which was where the location that I was chef and general manager, when I said I was the highest rated chef and top paid chef in town, that is where Edda's is now.
Okay.
And so Cafe Sport, after I left, they went to open their restaurant, their second one of the same, and $2 million later, 9 months later, they were out of business. So it was available, and that's how those things happen. It's funny, I'd been working with the owner, who was my boss when I worked there, about buying it, and we couldn't come to a price, so I walked away and I signed the lease at where Palace Kitchen is now for a really nice lease, $15 or $14 a square foot, you know, and blah, blah, blah. Years free rent. So that very same day I signed that lease, I get the call from the owner of Cafe Sport. He's down at bankruptcy court, and the judge says, we're not going to approve your bankruptcy plan unless you have a tenant for that space in the Pike Place Market. So he called me, he says, now, what did you want to pay again? And I said, nothing. He said, okay, and what do I get for the furniture and fixtures and the stoves and the hood? Nothing. He said, okay, but you'll sign a lease. I said, sure. So I signed both leases for our second and third restaurant in the same day, put Palace Kitchen on hold for a year, and built Edda's and got it open, and here we are today. And it turns out it's really fun to build restaurants. Who knew?
And
it's like it's like getting dealt a hand of cards, honestly. But you pick the cards, and you think, well, I can win with this hand. You pick the design, you pick the food style, you pick the chef, you pick, with the location. It's like all these bets, because we design and build our own restaurants. We have our own construction company in our company, and we design our own places. And so you really are just betting on yourself, and that's quite fantastic. And it's really such a treat, when they just kick butt. And when you work really hard at an idea, like we worked 3 months on the crust at Serious Pies. Anyone had Serious Pie pizza? It's pretty good. We worked a long time on that, and you play that hand and it works. It's cool.
What is the secret to the crust?
The secret to the crust is that it's secret, and that because what happens is you give out the recipe to 20 people and it comes out 20 different ways, and then everyone says, well, the crust sucks because it didn't work for me. But you don't have the right environment, you don't have the right oven, you don't have the right everything, and so by keeping it secret, nobody can screw it up.
All right. So how do you approach a new restaurant concept like that? Because I guess talk us through the different, you don't have to go through all 13, but the different areas that your restaurants cover and how you think about expansion and how you think about the new areas.
Well, I'm not one to do anything twice. Serious Pie Westlake is an aberration for us because we ended up with this space for our wholesale kitchens, the pastry and the bread moved over there, and then we ended up with this little space. But I had already signed the lease at Terry Avenue building where Cuoco and Brave Horse and Ting Momo are, and so I just didn't have time to do another idea up there. So I decided to just do a second Serious Pie, which has worked out beautifully because now there's Serious Biscuit also on the ground floor over there. But I kind of think about the location. I love buildings. I love the architecture. I like old buildings especially. We have 2 new places opening in the next 6 months or so, and one's in a very old building, and one is in a brand new building, which is unusual for us, but we're in that design phase right now. But I just think about things that are missing in the Seattle food scene. I think about ideas. I'm a great stealer. There's lots of good ideas out there, and if I see a good idea in Florida and I think Seattle could use something like that, I'll put my own spin on it and just kind of go for it. I love food. I love the business of restaurants. It's a very sexy, romantic business. If any of you want to get out of this boring day-to-day Zillow thing, we are desperately looking for motivated folks. When the Seattle unemployment rate gets to be about where it is now, because Zillows of the world steal all of our good staff, I tend to have to go like this. I say, you want to work here? Oh yeah, you got a pulse. You're doing it. But I don't know. I just find them to be fantastic. When I go out, when I go travel, I eat in restaurants, as you can see, 6-7 times a day. So it's not
Nice life.
And to this day, I eat in restaurants. It's somebody else's and one of mine at least every day. So we have our radio show and things. I have restaurateurs on. We love the business.
So how do you think about the Tom Douglas brand versus each restaurant's individual brand, and how do you balance the two?
Well, it's a sticky situation. If you go online and read about us, there's just as many. No, that's not true. There's 90% good things, but there's a lot of bad things just because of our size. My favorite is when they go into one of our new restaurants and they say, maybe it's somebody in this room. Like I saw it a lot at Serious Pie. I really hated that I liked his pizza. Or, God, I really didn't want to go there, but everyone said it was okay, so I went, and God damn it, it was good. And there's a lot of negativity about our size right now. I don't know if you get that in your business or not, but I know Microsoft does. A lot of the big players get that kind of negativity. And that's the hardest thing about the brand piece of that. Because each of our restaurants are run by very passionate people. Each has a chef, a couple of sous chefs, general managers and managers. They're all in this as a profession. Of our 750 employees, 200 have been with us over 10 years. Still 4 of our original 20 at Dalia are still with us, 23, 24 years later. So it's really a charming business. I mean, how many people have never wanted to open their own bar or their own restaurant? I mean, is there anyone here that just hates the idea of it? I mean, it's kind of fun. The fascinating thing to me of our last group of restaurants, especially the Terry Avenue building, I got access to a work group at Amazon, 600 people, because we were not sure we wanted to sign a lease over there, it's like, do they get us? And there's no hotels, there's no movie theaters, there's nothing that really draws people downtown to the core over there. Sure, we could do lunch, which turns out not to be true, but sure, we could do that daytime business, maybe happy hour business, but could we do a real restaurant business? So we did a survey before we signed a lease of 600 Amazonians, and our question was simple. If you had all the money in the world and you could open a restaurant, not have to work it, but just design it, just a restaurant of your choice, what would you open next to your workspace here at Amazon? What would it be? So anybody want to take a stab at that? What would you guys do in this room? Anybody, just raise your hand. Let's hear a few.
What was that?
Delivery to desk. Okay. That's a little bit like Amazon. Anybody else want to take a stab? Any restaurant in the world that you could open and make the revenue on, you didn't have to spend the dime to open it, what would it be? Brew pub. Where? Irish? Sushi.
Vietnamese sandwich shop.
Banh mi, little banh mi shop. That I love that. Burgers. Barbecue. What was the black fusion?
Latin fusion.
Latin
Yeah.
fusion. Okay. What was yours?
Like a farm to table, so you could do something other than eat.
Right.
Like your carrots and then
Right.
let the chef and say make them nice.
There you go. We had an overwhelming response, 72% as a matter of fact. We didn't get 600 respondents. I think we got around 175 respondents out of the 600 that we queried, which I thought was a little bit nerve-wracking, just the fact that you could open a free restaurant, you don't have an opinion here. Your boss sent you the email because I was off using his email list. So out of 175 respondents, we had 72% all on one page. Any guesses?
Mexican.
No. Any restaurant you can, cheap. It was one of the saddest days of my life. You could open any restaurant in the world that you wanted to for free, and the number one thing, 72% of the respondents said, we want it to be cheap. They didn't want burgers, Italian. They did want Italian, but, blah, blah, blah. It was really just depressing, and that's where the Brave Horse Tavern was born, was cheap. It's $4 pretzels, $6 burgers, and we responded to the survey, but I just thought it was so depressing. What is wrong with you? Were you software people, or you I gave a chat to the University of Washington Masters School of Business, and it was so obvious in that room that there is a lack of passion for anything but numbers, and it was really depressing. The other thing about that cheap, and I think you're seeing a little bit of it right now, the real cost of Walmart, right, is the real cost of cheap. And there's a documentary about that right now, but I think you're seeing it in Greece, and you're seeing it in places where people just put cheap above everything else instead of paying their taxes. I won't go to a restaurant right now that won't take a credit card because they're just taking cash under the table. I'm sorry. I pay for my military, I pay for my roads, I pay for, I believe you should pay your taxes. You should report your income. Now, maybe that's just because I'm 54 and not struggling anymore, but I think it's bullshit that people are living off the, and frankly, it's us. The number one requested article at Seattle Met magazine is cheap food around Seattle. Now, I think that's okay, but my staff needs health care. Do you guys get health care? My staff deserves health care too. They need it. And I just think that, we're not getting into politics, I know, but I just got to say, what's wrong with our president giving 40 million more Americans health care? I think it's pretty fucking great. So, there we go.
How do you think about the notion of celebrity chef? So since you've been in the business in the last 10 or 15 years, this really has become a big national notion, spurred by cable television and a lot of these shows that you've been on. And how do you think about that, first of all, but with your own brand? Your restaurants are here in Seattle, but there is this element to your brand of being well-known nationwide, and you are with the awards you've won and the TV shows you've been on. So just how do you wrap your mind around this whole notion of celebrity chef?
It's been foisted upon us, and it's quite fantastic from the idea that it keeps people coming to your restaurants. I would say that it's silly in a funny way, but it is out there and to be taken advantage of from the free press, so to speak. But outside of that, like they've asked me to be on the next Iron Chef, and they've asked me to be on Top Chef Masters, which I was a judge on, but I refused to be a contestant on. I'm just too old for that nonsense. When I was a judge on Top Chef in Vegas last year, or 2 years ago, I think it was now. I was just watching the whole thing. I was just there for one show, but I had to be there all day long, so you get to see kind of a snapshot of how it all works. And just watching how the producers were just thinking of shitty things to do to their contestants. It's like, this is no fun. And then I was feeling bad for all the contestants, and then the contestants come out, and I just watched. They were shittier to each other than the producers were to them. So, you kind of get into that nonsense. And, I know, what's his name is Hell's Kitchen, Gordon Ramsay is very popular, but I've been to his restaurant in Tokyo and New York and in London, and they're all the same goddamn restaurant. All he does is make his living off of that show. I don't think it's not that fun. I think that there's a lot of room for better TV.
So there are a lot of celebrity chefs who have done that, who they start in their home city and then they
A lot of my friends, a lot of my peers of my age group, the Marcus Samuelsons, Todd English, Nancy Silverton, Wolfgang Puck, a lot of them are there doing it right now. So
you get your restaurant in Vegas, and then you open an outpost in New York and somewhere else. Like, have you considered this? Are you doing this? You're going to stay here?
We've had offers everywhere, and certainly Vegas, especially 10 years ago when Vegas was hot. But I have one kid. I have a daughter, 22, who still thinks I'm okay. She just graduated from college, and I was not going to miss that. And Todd English, he's divorced twice. He left women at the altar. He travels the world, and it's like I just have no. Not that I'm any Todd English. I mean, he's got a face made for TV. I have a face made for radio. So my options were limited. But this happened at our Beast Feast the other night. I got a little frisky with the rotisserie. But I just have no interest in that. We are now looking, now that she's graduated and she's out of the house, we are looking at different things around the country, but they are more licensed scenarios. They're not really, the idea of me running a Palace Kitchen in Manhattan, I have no interest in doing.
So Iron Chef, how many people here have seen this, Iron Chef America? Okay, so this is why we're asking the question, because everybody's fascinated. So 2005 was when you were on the show?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess.
Jesus, that's a long time ago.
Tell us about, this is the most, if not one of the most popular culinary shows on the Food Network and across the cable shows. I guess describe the experience for us, and for those who don't understand it, kind of how it works and just how you got on the show in the first place.
Well, I had told my assistant that if they ever called to say no, but I happened to answer the phone, and for some reason I said yes. And then they said, would you consider going up against Morimoto? And I said yes, and then they were like, really?
Do a lot of the chefs say no? I mean,
well,
he's the...
they made me feel like that most people... Turns out he's the winningest Iron Chef of all time. I did not know that, but... so I had a theory, though. I put my hair up in a samurai just like he does, and so if anyone has seen that episode of Iron Chef, you'll notice that I had to do that 4 times because they redid that shot 4 times of me putting my hair up in a ponytail in a samurai. It's like.
So did they stop the clock? Say redo.
The clock wasn't on. It was just the announcement of the ingredient at that point. So anyway, I went back, and as a matter of fact, I was doing a charity event up on Orcas Island on the day that I was supposed to come back, get back by noon, get on a plane at 2, head to New York, and be there by midnight and film first thing in the morning. And of course, it got foggy on Orcas, and the planes don't run when it's foggy on Orcas, so I missed my flight. And finally, at about 4 o'clock, I got back. I got on the red eye, got into New York at 6:30, got to the studio at 7:30 that morning, and walked through, kind of got my bearings. I had my team with me, and we had practiced 3 menus at my house on the clock. So we kind of knew no matter what, whether we got meat, fish, or vegetable, we kind of knew that what we were going to kind of go for, because we had to send a list of the pantry ingredients back.
Yeah, so that's, I think, the big question about Iron Chef. Are you really surprised at the last minute when they throw out that ingredient? Really?
Yes.
And so how,
We were hoping for not fish because Morimoto is like the fish guru, right? So I know we got salmon, and people always say, well, God, you got salmon, you know salmon. Yeah, we do, but I'm a white guy. This guy knows salmon like a Japanese dude, and they know salmon like better than anybody else in the whole universe. And
so do they at least tell you categories, like have a fish dish prepared, have a meat dish prepared, have a...
yeah, so we came up with a menu that we could cross-reference. So for example, if we got lamb or salmon or say fava beans, right? So there's a vegetable, a meat, and a fish. We were told that. We knew we weren't going to get milk or, you know, because they do that sometimes, but apparently they tell people when they're going to get the weird ingredients. So we knew that. So we created a menu that cross-referenced all three of those things. So if it had been favas would have taken the lead. We would have used a little bit of salmon on the fava, a little bit of lamb, you know, one of the courses, and vice versa all throughout the menu. So that's what we practiced. And my wife kept time, and we had two of the cooks come and pretend to be cameramen, kind of getting in our way and things like that. So
Yeah,
I have a pretty nice kitchen at my house, got to say, and it worked out beautifully.
And how is that with the cameras in your face? Not just are you know, you're racing against the clock. How much time do they give you?
They give you an hour,
An
and it's a
hour.
true hour. I spent more time, you know, on the beginning of the show when they do this whole thing. You know, that was about an hour and 15 minutes. But once they do a la cuisine and you see the ingredient, you do have a second there because they have to do that 4 times to do the a la cuisine right. And that's why, in order for continuity on camera, does anyone know about continuity on camera? That's why I had to keep taking my hair out and putting my hair back up and blah, blah, blah. But once they start the clock, it's an hour.
And it's an hour, and you're cooking, and you're trying to focus, and you're going fast, and you're working with your team, and then there's a camera in your face asking you to describe something.
Yeah.
Is that hard? Did
No.
you practice that?
You know what's hard is Saturday night when we don't know how many people are going to walk into the Dalia, and 300 do, and you've got 10 people on the line cooking, and you've got 11 waiters waiting, and 2 hosts, and a manager saying, where the fuck's my food? That's hard. And that happens every day. When you're in New York City, staying at the Gansevoort, eating in fancy restaurants, drinking Maker's Mark before your show, free trip, right? Looking at all the cameramen and just, you know, poor guys carrying like 100 pounds on their shoulders, and you're just sitting there, this is kind of nice. Because, you know, you don't have to go to work, you don't have to do anything, so.
Well,
So you just do what you do naturally. You cook. I'm a cook. I mean, that just comes naturally to me. So you start to get creative and you start to think. And we did have one guy on our team. His name was Mark Fuller. Can anyone relate to Mark Fuller in this room? I don't want to tell bad stories on him if anyone knows him. He's got the restaurant Ma'ono over in West Seattle, which was Spring Hill.
okay.
He was the 3rd member of my team. And Eric and I just kind of got started. You know, we knew kind of where we were heading, and we had talked menu, and then we look over, and Mark's got his, you know, mental list of things to do, and he's just standing there, just completely flipped out. Just had no idea where he was or what he was doing. Just standing there. So Eric goes, Mark, come on. And Mark just looked at Eric like he had never met him before. So Eric went over, got him another shot of Maker's Mark, and he just kind of snapped out of it. And because we had all done a nice swig before, just to kind of.
All right.
So he came too and made the most delicious coconut milk or coconut water soup curry. It was really great.
And then you won.
And then we won, which was, I would say, just a bit of a shocker.
Yeah.
You know, we thought we'd do it just for the publicity, but I can tell you it's better to win. When you think like, well, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose because the publicity's good, right? It's like bullshit. It's better to win. And now they keep replaying it 7 years later. We're like 80-0. We win every frickin' time. It's like people always, why don't you go back and do another one? Well, because we might lose. You know,
So you mentioned that the hard thing is on a Saturday night at the restaurant. And actually, before we sat here, I was asking you over in the corner how many people you have on your business staff, and you kind of corrected me and said everyone that works for you is a business person, and the chefs who run the restaurant, I mean, they run the business side too, and that's something that people may not understand. I mean, it's kind of romantic to say, I want to go to culinary school, I want to become a chef, but there is some real true business stuff here that has to get done. And I mean, tell us about how that
well,
works
you kind
in
of,
restaurants.
what you were trying to ask is, on the general manager side or this. Well, I never get crappy letters from people saying, "Wow, your general manager sucks." I get crappy letters when people say my waiter was insensitive, my food was terrible. Those kind of letters. So if those guys, if only the business side, if only the people that really have no daily function other than to train the working staff, if they didn't know how to run the business, it's like the uphill gerbil race all the time, right around the circles. Every person has to understand their value, from the host, the first person that they walk into, from the guy who sweeps the cigarette butts up in downtown Seattle in front of our space, because you kind of get a whole different view. If you've got a bunch of cigarettes on the entrance there, you get a whole different feeling. Everybody has to understand their part of the business, because our margins are very small. I understand after talking to Amy that the margins at Zillow are very huge. Ours are not. Our best year ever in 23 years, we did a 7% profit. So the margins are small. We run a 43 to 45% labor cost. Again, because I believe in healthcare and all the things that go with paying people a living wage and treating them professionally. We have paid vacations. Now we have paid time off. We have, I just believe in running our business in the best way possible, because without them, there's no me. And it's very self-serving, but it's true. It's also the question, don't you feel so proud of how many jobs you've created in Seattle? It's like, I really don't. I feel so proud of the people that work, set their alarm and get up and get to work. I feel proud of the people that write their rent check and don't skate out on their bills. I feel proud of the people that take life seriously, have kids, buy homes. That's what makes me proud. But you're responsible to get out of bed and to get to your job. I don't write your rent check, you do. So that's kind of, we empower everyone to be the business of our business. And so we have financial training for everyone, both professionally, how does the restaurant work, and personally. And the personal one happened 5 years ago when I was telling my crew, if the banks freeze up, all of our money is in the banks. There is no payroll. As much as, I don't care how much, I could have $50 million in there saved up. If the banks are frozen, there's no money. You need to prepare for yourself and for your family. And they just looked at me wide-eyed. And that's when we realized that we weren't doing our job of preparing not just our employees to work for us, but for their own lives. The thing that pisses me off the most is when somebody leaves me to go open their own restaurant and they fail, because it makes me feel like a failure. I have no problem if people come and go and they want to do their own thing, want to be their own business person. I got no problem with it. It's not for everybody. That's another lesson learned in my business. I always tried to treat people like I wanted to be treated. Well, a lot of people don't care about that. They just want to have a good, safe place to go to work. But getting back to your point, everyone needs to have the business acumen to understand, or else in the restaurant business, if one bartender is giving drinks away at night, that can shave your margin by 2% of your 7. It's just a huge number. We work on volume and we work on multiples, right, of small profits.
So I had some fun questions that people emailed me to ask you. What is your favorite dish of all your restaurants that you guys put out?
That's a bullshit question. Do I look like I have one favorite dish? Let's move on.
All right. Favorite non-Tom Douglas restaurant right now in
That's
Seattle?
a better question. Favorite? I had to give up one of my favorites because they won't take credit cards. Faux Bach down at 12th and Jackson. I always liked that place. Best soup noodles in town, I think, and now I can't go there anymore. My own personal. We have these little things that we do every year. Last year was my year of the double tip, so I double tipped everywhere I went. Man, that's good PR right there. I got to tell you, that's a good marketing campaign. Double tip.
All right.
Okay. Favorite non-Tom Douglas restaurant?
I could rephrase it.
No, that's okay. Because, I eat in a million restaurants. In the country or just in Seattle?
Start with Seattle.
I still love a good run-through wild ginger. I'll give you a couple maybe. I think I don't look at restaurants just about the food. I look at the atmosphere. I like a perfect restaurant. There's very few perfect restaurants I've been to in my life. Stars in San Francisco, if you remember Jeremiah Tower Stars, I thought that was a perfect restaurant. Everything was right about that restaurant. From the good scotch and soda to the perfect field green salad to great, perfectly cooked entrees, the gorgeous open kitchen. You just felt like a superstar when you walked in there, and you left feeling the same way. That's a perfect restaurant. And so in this town, I don't know that we have that many. I think Sitka and Spruce is awesome. I love the feeling in there. Did I just use the word awesome? That's kind of...
That's all right. You're among like people on that.
I can't really think of any any off the top.
If you were marooned on a desert island, had one big meal left in your life tonight, what would you eat?
I'd have the slow roasted rotisserie duck from the Dalia.
And you answered our first question then. What's your favorite?
Yeah, I just love that. Just we have this little spice rub that we use on there. I don't know if you know, but I have a line of spice rubs that I sell in 5,000 markets around the country, and that's based on the Chinese 12 spice rub, and it's really I just like that slow cooking over applewood, well done, fall off the bone, crispy skin, frickin' delicious. Now we're serving it with an eggplant tingmo, and it's a nice combination too.
Who in your industry has most influenced you?
Well, you go home and sleep with one person every night. That's probably it right there, yeah. My honey is really supportive, and we got through some very tough times when we opened our first business. We opened, like I said, underfinanced. She was 5 months pregnant. We were in the middle of a housing remodel at our home, so we had the baby in the living room, in the dining room with the bread brought down from the... We couldn't afford to pay the contractor, but we did. $300 worth of bounced checks every month. My management team holding their paychecks. Me borrowing money from my best friend who had a very successful restaurant that I helped build called Al Bocolino down at 1 Yesler. So I borrowed money every 2 weeks to try and make my payroll. I put myself on COD with my purveyors because if I was going to go down in flames, I didn't want to take them with me. She stuck through all that stuff. And we somehow made it through. We were a management team, a triangle team. I had a general manager, Jackie, my wife, and myself. And we were in that, don't ever do that. That's the stupidest thing. Would you agree with that? Somebody needs to be the boss. And so I had offered to quit the restaurant if those two wanted to run it because we were just fighting constantly. Everything we tried, new menus, new logos, new everything didn't work. And she's now the chief farmer at our farm in Prosser. She's just fantastic, and she knows restaurants inside and out, even though she wasn't brought up in that business. And she's always done the colors of our restaurants. While I do the design, she does the colors. So we've found our place together as restaurateurs. I get all the credit; she gets none. That's quite fantastic. But she's just, I would say, just in the last couple of years, we always had as an independent business person, you have to have a life plan, right? If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, what happens? You got a kid, you got businesses to deal with, you have to have a will. Who here doesn't have a will at this point? I bet half this room doesn't have a will. Is that true? Get a fucking will. You know what? If you don't want the state to take care of it, my buddy died of a heart attack at 50 with a restaurant, a lover, an illegitimate child, and an adopted child, and a pissed off ex-wife, and a crazy mother without a will. He fell over dead of a heart attack. And frankly, he put a lot of people through some shit that they shouldn't have had to deal with if he had taken care of his own business. And so if you don't have a will, get a will. So I don't remember where I was with that, but my wife is awesome.
Let's open it up to audience questions. Ethan
He's
Stoll.
quite fantastic. We had dinner together the other night at his restaurant, Staple and Fancy. I don't really know him that well. People have been trying over the last couple of years to kind of pit us as rivals. Turns out we're not. We're in the same business and we like each other and we both think that we're good cooks. So that's kind of cool. He invited me down. I did a salmon bake at the Mariners Ballpark, Safeco Field. Oh yeah, good. So we were trying that out. Ethan is the consulting chef for Safeco Field, so he invited us down on his own. I just think he's terrific. His restaurants are quite hot. I really wanted to buy his restaurant called Union, which is right on this corner here where Japanisa is. How many of you go to Japanisa? Yeah, I thought so. It's cheap, right? I understand. Ethan could not make a go of it there, and that restaurant, you think, missed opportunities, right? But that restaurant went for under 80-seat restaurant for under $100,000. You could open tomorrow. It was such in nice shape. And so Ethan we were just chatting about how he's been so successful in the neighborhoods, and I've been more successful in the downtown core, and it's just a different business. And he keeps asking me, when am I coming to Ballard? And I'm just not going because I don't understand neighborhoods. I don't think I understand. I don't want to understand. I like the urban core, I do. I kind of show up. If I'm in town, I'm at work. I have been taking more time off recently, which has been terrific. But I'm a worker bee. So, after I have an Obama Salon thing tonight. I've got general managers meeting at 2 today, and then at 3:30 I have, I have a schedule. But I meet with my chefs every week, and we talk food, what's in the marketplace, what are your problems, what are your issues, my crew is, as I'm sure you probably would all say, they're just amazing, and they kind of run their own businesses. I just am like a little shepherd or something. I'm not really sure, but it's funny. The bigger I get, the less I have to do, literally. From a literal job perspective. That I hate email and I hate that kind of stuff. Well. Who said? You said Pan-Latin or something, right? You said Latin, I'm surprised that hasn't hit Seattle at this point. Chris Keff from Flying Fish tried to do Fandango across the street from Flying Fish. This is where you think you know everything, and then you just go like, I can't believe it. Chris Keff, at that time, Flying Fish was one of the busiest restaurants in Seattle. She got this space right across the street from her where she could co-manage both restaurants. Sent some of her top waiters over there, did this whole Pan-Latin thing. Edgar Martinez was a partner, got all kinds of play in the press. Every night on the baseball broadcast, they talked about going down to Fandango tonight, and just every possible right thing that could happen for that restaurant happened, and it was out of business in less than 2 years. So sometimes you just never know what's going to take. Go back to tell me your question one more time. So that is the one. The other one that's really going to be solved here in the next couple of months, or at no later than a year, is modern Indian food. I'm so anxious for modern Indian food because I'm tired of eating overstewed. I know that's traditional. I know that's the way it's supposed to be, but it's just not for me. I like fresh. And Vidges is coming down from Vancouver. And then there's a woman from Chicago who's looking at some space in town. I think we're going to see a little mini explosion of Indian restaurants, which I'm very excited about. Well, she's been in college for 4 years, so we haven't cooked lately, but we did a lot of TV early on with she and I cooking together. And that was like the hot news story for a while. But she loves to cook. She cooked, oddly enough, she was at school for a month, and she was dating the football team. So only one of the players, but she was feeding the rest of them. You know what I meant. Yeah, she was dating the center on the football team. And of course, with the co-ed dorms these days, they're in the dorm right next door. And so once she got to be a junior and senior and actually had cooking facilities in her dorm, she would have Sunday night suppers at the dorm. And she really enjoys it. And she did get into a bad habit of boneless, skinless chicken breast, which really, it's a product that just kind of pisses me off. Yeah. Life is too short. Well, I have lots of thoughts on Yelp, although it's, has anyone been following the story about the pizza hug? It's fascinating to me, the way the internet responds sometimes, but Yelp is, I just challenged my team at Cuoco, where we make, all of my new restaurants, we try to put our effort out front. We're trying to distinguish ourselves between the clutter out there of chain restaurants and the effort that we make as scratch restaurants. And I'm seeing it in many of the restaurants out there, even Sick and Spruce, all these places have open kitchens. We want you to know that we're putting in the effort. We may or may not be the best cooks in town. That's not really the point of the effort show, but we want you to know that we are making the effort to put the best foot forward that we can in our restaurants. So I'm having a hard memory time, but from the Yelp perspective, we did that at Cuoco, our pasta house over in South Lake Union. If you've been there, you see when you walk right in the front door, you walk right in to say the pasta kitchen, where we're making all of our pleen, our little raviolis, everything, the lamb and mint raviolis, the homemade tagliarine, whole egg pasta, sliced really thin by hand, blah, 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 effort, deliciousness. And then we went on to Yelp and noticed that we were a full star behind the Olive Garden in Renton. So, and outside of putting all-you-can-eat $10 pasta courses out, which I can't afford to do and don't want to do, I challenged them, please get me within a half a star. Somehow, what do we have to do? Marketing genius. What do we have to do to get within a half a star of the Olive Garden Renton? So from that perspective, it's frustrating. From the perspective of what happened with this pizza story, where as soon as he hugged Obama, Yelpers from all over the country started trashing his restaurant on Yelp, giving him 1 star and trashing, this terrible place and blah, blah, blah. And that once people realized what was happening, an avalanche of positive Yelpers kind of jumped in and mostly not because they were Obama supporters, mostly because they were destroying the integrity of Yelp and saying, no, you can't do this with this. This isn't, whether this guy likes Obama or not, it doesn't make his pizza good or bad. And just using it as a political conversation was ridiculous. And it was just great to see that Yelp responded to that. So long question, or short question, long answer, I don't know. It's inevitable. It's tough sometimes to take. I have a 6-burner, 24-inch broiler, 24-inch griddle, Garland stove set up with a hood. I had a 110,000 BTU wok burner there, but it was the neon and off like they have in all the Chinese restaurants. But my dog liked to turn it on and off, and so it sounds like a jet engine, when you do that. So I had to take that out, but I have a little barbecue set up, 3 different barbecues for different ways of cooking: a searing grill, a smoking grill, and a rotisserie grill. It's just a nice place. It's very comfortable. It's a combination of a home kitchen and a professional kitchen. Well, he was in town to promote Maria Cantwell. And they had the event at my ballroom, which is our event facility. And as is typical, they're always in a hurry. And so didn't have time. I had heard that he liked pie. So, of course, we are famous for our coconut cream pie, and so I brought a pie with me, and he didn't have time to eat it. He was heading up to his next stop, and so I had the Secret Service guy put it into his limo, and never thought another thing about it. 2 days later, I'm checking my messages on my phone, and there's this, Tom, this is Barack. That pie was over the top, dude. And so I thought maybe it was a hoax, but nobody would know. It was definitely him. I could tell it was him. It was his voice. And thanks so much. And then he hung up. And so now every time he comes to town, he actually asks for it, and we put a pie into his limo with the Secret Service. So. Well, right now the dead giveaway is that you'll see the Prosser Farm logo on every one of our menus. There's a dead giveaway. Go back to your first part again. Oh, yeah.
But it was mainly your choice of.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And that's an often asked question. Yeah. It's very unusual among my peers around the country for that to be the case. I have some sort of ADD, that's why I can't remember questions even. I have some sort of that, I think, that I get really, I wouldn't say bored is the right word, but I like that. Like I said, the fresh hand, the fresh deal. And you have an idea, is this missing? Does this work? Will this be fun? I do.
Do you see that in your future?
I don't. But, Southern food, that's a big area.
It is,
But are you talking about black food from Atlanta, or are you talking about, Southern food from Kansas City or from Texas? I mean, that's a big, okay,
I have a famous fried chicken recipe.
right. Famous outside of your family or famous in your family?
Famous, not even in my family, it's from my friend from West Virginia.
Okay.
Fried chicken is like no other fried chicken I've ever had. It has to be your ever.
Absolutely. I'd love to know. All right, it's a deal. But, you go down to Atlanta and you have Southern soul food, and you get, that is just not my kind of eating. You go to a buffet and you have a hotel pan of stuffing, right? That is the same texture as the hotel pan of grits, same texture as the hotel pan of mashed potatoes, and turkey and I understand. But you go to have black barbecue in Kansas City, and it's so different than black barbecue in Alabama. I love the Kansas City version. You go down to Texas and have barbecue, it's done by old Germans. So in Croyd's Market and Salt Lick, places like that. So it's South is a very big question, and it's different across the board. But I could see that. We're doing fried chicken biscuits at Serious Biscuit right now. It's the #1 seller, and who knew? Wine. I'm a golfer. I like to play golf. I'm going down to Bandon Dunes. Anybody else a golfer? We're flying down to Bandon Dunes in a couple of weeks. Looking forward to that. But that's probably my biggest outside hobby.
So unfortunately, we got to wrap, but
But thank you for
we're
that input. I
so
appreciate it.
thankful
Yeah.
and honored for you to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.